Mark Rogers TV talking some Pac-12 recruiting. National Signing Day is behind us. We want to catch up on the Utah Utes. Best way to do that is to bring in Shane Roberts from Block U to help us out. Regular contributor here, including, of course, our Pac-12 show, Pac-12 Breakdown on Wednesday night. All right, Shane, let's dive into it because we talked before we hit the record button that this is arguably the finest recruiting class in Utah football history. Roughly in that 35 range, according to the national rankings. Can you kind of gather up those top recruits that could become impact players sooner rather than later?
Yeah, this class was, like you alluded to, arguably the best class that Utah's ever signed, at least on paper. Obviously, a lot of these players we're going to find out a lot about in a year to 4 years, but the potential is definitely there, and Utah's very, very good at identifying diamonds in the rough. But you ask about some of the ones that can contribute right away. There's a handful that jump out immediately. Utah's been very successful about going the JC route. Really, in their history, they've been very, very good at it, and that's where some of their instant contributors are going to come in, and that's led by Garrett Bowles, a 4- or 5-star rated offensive lineman out of Snow College. Some services had him as the #1 rated JC player in the country. Every school in the country wanted this kid. He had an offer from Alabama, from Ohio State, from Utah to USC to Florida. If he would have walked onto anybody's campus, they would have taken him. He's a very high-level recruit. He's probably Utah's starting left tackle, starting immediately. And he's very high-level NFL draft prospect as well. So he's one name to keep an eye out for. Definitely not a sexy name when it comes to anything out there, but when it comes to offensive line play, it's great to be able to land a player like that and keep him away from the likes of Alabama and SC and the like. So a second name to keep an eye out for would be Troy Williams. He is a JC quarterback. Coming out of high school, he was one of the top-ranked quarterbacks in terms of dual threat capabilities. He signed to go to Washington. He started a game for him in absolutely awful conditions, played a little bit of mop-up duty here or there. And then once Sark went to USC and Chris Peterson came in, he decided, the system's not really going to work that well. He's a spread guy, and Peterson wants to run a little bit more of a mixture of West Coast and spread. So Troy Williams is the odds-on favorite to be the starting quarterback next year. So big deal there. Couple other names to look out for. Another one, which is a quarterback, is Tyler Huntley. He's from Hollandale Beach, Florida. He was actually the Gatorade Player of the Year in Florida this past year. He was also like the Miami Dolphins High School Player of the Year. I don't know why they do that, but he was one of the best quarterback prospects out of the state of Florida. So Utah was able to go in there with Dennis Erickson and pull him out. That's a very big get. Chances are, ideally, he would sit in redshirt and develop, but the coaches love his potential at quarterback. Very, very nice. He actually brings 2 teammates with him. We call them the Hollandale Trio. One is Damari Simpkins, a slot wide receiver, and the other one is Zach Moss. Zach Moss was highly sought after by Tennessee. They made a hard push on him. And then he actually decommitted from Miami to come to the U. So 3 of those South Florida kids are coming in, and all very, very talented. And the last one that I'll probably talk about is David. His name's crazy. It's Lafitasaga. He was actually an Ole Miss commit, and he flipped on signing day. He was actually kind of a silent commit for Utah for a couple weeks. The chances of him going to Ole Miss were slim to none. He's Polynesian. He's from Hawaii, so he has very strong ties to the Utah Polynesian culture, if you will. That Utah has a ton of Polynesians on their roster, and he's a junior college linebacker. He's going to fill an immediate need at linebacker where Utah lost 3 starters. So those are some names to definitely keep an eye out for that could be instant contributors going into the 2016 season.
Shane, of course, there's more information and more video on these guys than ever before. It's a big business, and there's, because of the media situation and internet, all sorts of footage and, again, information on these guys. So if you go down the list a little bit, Any particular players or group of players that intrigue you, maybe don't have the stars next to the name, but because of something you saw on tape or something that you heard, you're kind of intrigued to see?
There's two in particular, two or three actually. The first one, I actually wrote about him on Block U a few days ago. His name's Donovan Thompson. He's from Miami, so he's another South Florida kid. He was committed to Florida FIU, so he didn't have a whole bunch of offers. Not a huge name, but when you watch him on film, he just stands out. He reminds me of actually Gianni Paul, which for those of you who follow Pac-12 football is arguably the best defensive player in the conference this past year. Just has a nose for the football. He's constantly around it. He likes to lay the wood, so he'll hit people. He's not the biggest guy. He's only about 5'10", so just like Gianni, very undersized, but he just has a knack to make plays. He's one of those kids, once you turn on the film, he just stands out and pops out. Another one, is Leki Fotu. He's actually from here in Utah. He's only a 2-star recruit by many services, but his raw potential and capability is off the charts. USC was pushing for this kid very, very hard. They wanted him badly, and they made a big push going into signing day, but he kept his commitment to Utah, and he's a defensive end. Utah has a knack for putting defensive ends into the NFL, so they can definitely see defensive end talent or defensive lineman talent in general. The kid is very raw, but he has a lot of capabilities. And a lot of his film, you'll see him just using strength, brute force just to get by his guys. Once he learns a little bit of a technique, he can be a force. And Utah head coach Kyle Whittingham was practically salivating over this kid when they announced him during his press conference. So those are two big names to watch out for.
Shane Roberts from Block U helping us sort out the Utah yield on National Signing Day. You mentioned Gianni Paul, Travis Wilson, Devontae Booker, a number of talented players moving on. In terms of positional weaknesses, where are you thin? Were those areas addressed?
Well, I mean, the one everybody wants to look at is quarterback, of course, and Utah addressed that, obviously. I mentioned both Troy Williams and Tyler Huntley. That's probably both the present and the future for Utah football. A lot of fans are extremely excited. Both of them are already on campus. They enrolled early, so they will participate in spring ball. This might be the most anticipated spring practice in years at Utah, since Travis Wilson was a 4-year starter. The other position in need was linebacker. Utah lost all 3 starting linebackers. Since Utah runs predominantly a 4-3 front. The kid I told you about earlier, Wafa Hasaga, he will more than likely be a starting linebacker. The other ones, let me see here. Curtis Tafua, he's another one to look out for. He comes from Snow College, so another JC guy, a highly rated 3-star, borderline 4-star, according to a lot of services out there. He's an instant impact type of player. Utah just kind of has a knack for identifying these JC guys that can kind of plug and play right away, and I'd expect a similar thing for him. Another one to look out for, possibly, obviously I told you about Donovan Thompson. I think he might get some run. Alec Dana is a wide receiver, a JC wide receiver. That's about a 4-3, 4-4 kind of guy that they're going to want to stick probably in the slot. Actually, no, he's a bigger guy. He's 6'3", so he'll probably be more on the outside, but he's still very, very fast. Plays the ball very, very well in the air. So that's another kind of area of need that Utah's had, is some playmaking wide receivers. They've gotten some good classes in the past, but they're yet to have a guy really step up and take that role. So they're bringing some guys in for that. Obviously, you alluded to Devontae Booker. He's moved on. Utah has Joe Williams coming back, but he's a little bit more of a speed back. That's why they went out and got Zach Moss, who's quite the bruiser. Again, out of South Florida, the dude can run people over. He's very Booker-like in a lot of ways. Runs very similarly, so it'll be interesting to see how he kind of fits in. But in terms of areas of need, Utah fans in particular had a ton of concerns about the linebackers in particular, because the linebacker commits kind of came in kind of a bunch there at the very end. The quarterbacks, they pretty much had locked up for quite a while, so there wasn't a lot of concern about quarterback. But the linebackers, once they locked those guys in, there was a lot of relief around both the coaching staff and the fan base for sure.
So when Kyle Whittingham and his coaching staff is able to convert top 50 classes into top 25 teams, top 15 teams, and even better than that on occasion, there has to be a level of confidence there, I would think, Shane, when you get a haul like this that, of course, you need 2 or 3 of these, but really put something together. But you've coached them up already into teams that can contend for Pac-12 championships, and then you get some players like this that, at least on paper, would seem to translate to even better success.
Oh, for sure. Utah had a good season coming out of the gates in the Pac-12. Nothing special, but a nice kind of introductory season. They were 4-5 in the conference. They won 8 games that season, so they started off pretty well. Then they had 2 kind of downward seasons based off of some attrition. So the recruiting hurt just a little bit, but they were able to develop up some guys. And obviously 9 wins last season, 10 wins this past season. So they're starting to get the ball rolling a little bit. They got up to number 3 in the country at one point. They kind of got screwed out of a good bowl game, but it is what it is. So yeah, they're starting to get some momentum in the recruiting, and they've actually been in the running for some very high level recruits. Some recruits they've lost to USC, that they lost to Notre Dame, that they've lost to Ohio State. To UCLA as well. There's one high-level wide receiver that they thought they had committed, named his last name's Marquise Stovall. He was actually a USC commit, decommitted. Then he opened it up and kind of went down to Cal and Utah. And Utah coaches thought they had him committed. He actually told the coaches the night before he made his commitment official on Twitter. He's like, "Yes, I'm coming to Utah." And then on Twitter, he committed to Cal, and so all the coaches were like, "What's up with that?" The rumor is that his parents might have gotten his ear a little bit, wanted him to stay close to home. So once they start flipping some of those prospects a little bit more, then you'll start to see the classes continue to climb. It's going to be hard for Utah to compete with the likes of USC, to compete with the likes of Stanford. Utah has a lot of really good in-state talent that they have a hard time keeping because of Stanford. But when you're offered a full-ride scholarship to Stanford, that's kind of a hard thing to pass up, especially if you're a parent. Football, I mean, the statistics is 2% of college football players are going to make it to the NFL. But when you have a Stanford degree, you're in pretty good shape. So it's going to be hard to beat out the Stanfords and the USCs of the world. But as long as they beat out and stick in the middle tier of the Pac-12 and keep developing like they have, you'll see the program continue to grow and to land some of those top-flight, high-level recruits.
Shane Roberts from Block U, sorting out Utah's recruiting class for 2016 following a 10-3 finish in 2015. Shane, thanks so much for joining us. Always appreciate the time.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.